What is your opinion? 1. Which make better household pets, cats or dogs? 2. Should tomato sauce be kept in the fridge or in the cupboard? And 3. Which has better fries, KFC or McDonald's? There are lots of different opinions that you can have. Me, I was a dog person, but now I like cats. Should tomato sauce be kept in the fridge or in the cupboard? Nowhere in the house, I think. And which has better fries, KFC or McDonald's? I'm a chip person myself. Now let's move on to this lesson. This is section 2, Knowledge and Skills for Analysing Persuasive Texts, and this lesson is on argument construction and evidence. What's in this lesson? How arguments are constructed, including contention, main points, supporting arguments, call to action. You can put rebuttal point or counter argument in there as well. Types of evidence used to support arguments, how arguments are linked, the linking points within arguments, and argument style. The most relevant study design dot points for this lesson: use of contention and supporting arguments, including sequence and structure, and supporting evidence. Also to identify, analyse and apply the intent and logical development of an argument, the different evidence the author uses to support arguments. Let's look now at key arguments of argument construction, some really important terminology you need to know. So this is an example 2 of meta-language, this terminology. An argument consists of points structured and sequenced to persuade an intended audience to the author's point of view. The contention is the central message. A counter-argument is an argument point that refutes or counters an existing argument. You can often use this in your own writing by acknowledging the counter-argument and then turning it around so it becomes another point in your own argument. Call to action is a request by an author, and it asks the intended audience to act, think, or believe in something. The hook is an engaging introduction to an argument. Evidence, proof used to support your arguments. Language, of course, the written and spoken words and the images used, so put visuals in there as well. Features of the chosen form, you will have seen this in another lesson, all those conventions and expected elements. And, here we've got visuals here separately because it's written in the performance descriptors separately. Still or moving images, photographs, graphs, videos, cartoons, memes, etc. All very important meta-language. Now let's look at my favourite argument construction fish. We've got some really good points here. So we've got our hook, usually at the start of an argument. Then we have our argument points 1, 2, and 3, but they support the central contention that virtually runs through the entire persuasive text. And here we've got plus or minus a counter argument, which are often used as your argument 4th point. And at the end, we have the call to action. Now we can add a bit more. Once an author has organised their purpose, their contention, their argument points, their hook, then they flesh it out. So we need evidence. We need evidence to support argument points. All authors need evidence to help it to be more convincing. And then once you've got your evidence, you can organise the features of forms, the techniques and strategies. These are the persuasive, the figurative language, the emotive language. You've also got formal language, jargon, all those sorts of things that will be addressed also in this section. And don't forget the all-important visual. I've put it up there as a fisheye, but really the visuals could go anywhere. They're not necessarily at the top end of the argument, although a visual could actually be an example of a hook. Now it's your turn to read the article Cats v Dogs, which I've created for you, and then fill in the following table to complete the activity. So you are going to have to look for examples of contention, main point 1, 2, 3, 4, and call to action. There is no counter argument in this persuasive text. This is an easy peasy text just to get you going. And I also need you to look for the evidence. I've given you a hint there in that the visual will be the photograph of a cute cat with the caption, "Take me home for Christmas." Okay, so now let's look at my analysis of the Cats v Dogs text. Developing an argument and finding evidence. So I thought that the contention was adopt a cat as it is a better household pet than a dog. I thought the main points of the argument, cats are cheaper to keep than dogs, cats require less maintenance than dogs, cats are superior to dogs, cats are cuter than dogs. And the call to action was at the end of the piece, register to adopt a cat. Now the evidence for this, so evidence for cats are cheaper to keep than dogs was the Mozo money-saving website statistics. Then main point 2, less maintenance, cats are less maintenance, was Kringle vet claims, so a form of expert opinion. Main point 3, superior, I used that the cats were gods in ancient Egypt, thinking, the ancient Egyptians were marvellous, and this is what the cats did. And cats are cuter. I used the example that there are cat cafes, not dog cafes in Japan, and that fitted with the visual, the photograph of the cute cat with the caption. There are different types of evidence used to support arguments. And what you need to know is that the strongest arguments are supported by evidence. So here's a list of 5 different types. There are more, but these are probably the 5 most common. 1, of course, we have facts that are objective proven statements. And the example I've put here is that learner drivers in Victoria must drive with a supervising driver who has a full and current licence. They must have 0 blood alcohol concentration at all times when they drive. Statistics, got to be a bit careful here because you can use statistics to sway and, there's some gratuitous statistics. So, according to the latest Institute of Wellbeing statistics, current use of e-cigarettes among young females has increased from 2.4% in 2019 to 20% in 2022 and 2023. That's an example of a very scary statistic. Expert opinions. Statements from experts in particular areas. Now, you need to be careful here. You need to check that the area of expertise is relevant to the issue. So if we're talking a medical issue, the expert is not necessarily the doctor of history. We need a medical doctor. For example, Cullen Brown, the Associate Professor in Biological Sciences at Macquarie University, said swimming or surfing at beaches by yourself or far away from major towns or cities increase the chances of a shark bite. Personal witness testimony, factual first-person account. So often a quote from a witness. When the ticket inspectors boarded the tram, I saw one commuter get out and run away. And visuals can, of course, also be evidence. We can have data graphs, photographs, images, tables, etc. They can represent the statistics or include the statistics as well. Your turn now. Match the example to the correct type of evidence. Fill in the table using the drag and drop feature of the evidence types to the right to complete the activity. Now here are my answers to the drag and drop activity. Number 1, the Kringle vet hospital claim, self-clean, do not need walks, taken out, blah, 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 is expert opinion. I'm saying that these are experts. Number 2, comparison of costs for a cat and then listing the costs, statistics. And number 3, I'm saying that cats were gods in ancient Egypt, protected the grains not only from rodents but also from snakes, is a fact. Now let's have a look at linking points within arguments. This is really important in order to present an argument as a cohesive piece of text, like it all follows logically and makes sense. One of the most common ones to use are signposts, clarifying words and phrases. These, as you'll note down here, are mostly used in oral presentations and audio texts, so be on the lookout for that if you have a transcript. Let me begin by, finally, many people may say, usually signals a counter-argument. There are only 2 options, often accompanied with hand gestures. Firstly, in summary, means this is exactly what I'm going to do. As I said earlier, I'm repeating a point. So they're all signposts, fairly obvious. Now we have a second type of linking called lexical chains, and they're patterns used to link ideas in speeches and writing. These include, really obvious one, repetition, such as key terms, points in titles, headlines. Cross-references, so these are linking again to titles, key terms. Synonyms, words that have similar meanings but may vary in word strength. For example, Australians, community, society, public, all very, very similar. And then we have hyponyms, words that can be expressed by more general words. For example, a poodle, a Labrador, golden retriever are all hyponyms of dog, and dog is a hyponym of animal. Now your turn again. Read the article, Cats and Dogs, and then you need to locate 3 synonyms or identify 3 synonyms for the word cat that are used in the article to complete the activity. You can access the article via the Download Resources button below or by clicking through to the next part of the lesson. So here's the answer. The 3 synonyms that were in the Cats v Dogs persuasive text. 3 synonyms for cat, moggies, kittens, and furry friends. Now let's look at argument style. An argument style, an author's argument style, is how they present their argument, and it's linked to their personal context, their identity, their purpose. It can also be thought of as their voice in a text, can be very individual. For example, a scientist may present a very factual argument about climate change, while a personal columnist may present a far more emotive argument. And this is connected to all sorts of elements of argument style. So it's to do with, 1, how an author structures their points, the form they choose. One can be more formal, more informal. The language they use a lot more facts to give it a logical, like facts and evidence, or a more emotive type stuff like anecdotes and appeals. Their tone, very important, and the different persuasive strategies they choose to employ. Once again, under that heading of fact and logical language, statistics, other points of evidence. Under emotive, you've got appeals, anecdotes, maybe exaggeration. Then you've got figurative language, lots of different types of language. So what you can look at too in this section also is the lessons on author identity, context, and purpose. Now, argument style, I've written here, several broad ones that you may use. Some are pretty obvious, scientifically based for, say, an environmental text, Emotive, personal, and affected by inherent bias. Inherent bias is an interesting term. It's an existing preference due to favoritism, due to the background or status. So, for example, in Cats versus Dogs, the person, George Whiskers McQueen, who wrote that, he has an inherent bias because he manages the cat adoption agency. So we're looking at things like that. Your argument may be factual, logical, straightforward. It might be a humorous argument, very difficult to do. It might be anecdotally based, a more personal type of argument. It could be positively framed, so it's got an optimistic tone, etc. All these things contribute. Can be economically focused, can be highly visually focused, so it may include lots of visuals as evidence or argument points. And it might be didactic. It can seem patronizing or preachy, like intended to teach something as an ulterior motive, like a moral lesson behind it. So an argument can also be constructed as a series of counter-arguments in response to another argument. An argument, as we've already seen with advertorial, can be really an advertisement for a product or a service. And an argument can be presented as a comparison or an attack on an entity. For example, you may have a community member villainizing a company or entity or an initiative. Arguments can be a combination of several styles, like they can be factual and they can be emotive. There's all sorts. This is not just the only sort. Also, I don't think you should panic if you cannot readily identify an argument style. Sometimes it is less obvious. Sometimes an argument might seem like, I don't know if it is this or if it is that. I wouldn't get too hung up on it. Okay, this lesson in a nutshell. We had key elements of argument construction: contention, main points or supporting arguments, counter-argument, plus or minus, call to action, evidence, visuals, language, features of the chosen form. We had the extremely good-looking argument construction fish that helps us visualize all these elements of argument construction. Then we have a load of key terms or meta language. And finally, what's coming next? Author identity, context, and purpose.